Heidi Love in the house, dropping knowledge and facts, uncovering the truth, no need for acting lax. She ain't afraid to speak her mind, breaking through the lies, rising up with love, taking us to new highs. We're living in a world full of secrets and deceit, but Heidi's here to expose, bringing truth to the beast. She's got a message, spreading it far and wide, from addiction to hope. She's on the other side. Ooh, yeah.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Unfiltered Rise and Sixth Sensory podcast, because we team up and we talk some stuff about lots of fun things, but awesomely, again, Howard Hughes today.
Yeah,
So
looking forward to
I'm
it.
excited. Yes, Tim, tell me all about it. How you doing?
Hey, I'm doing good. Happy to be here. Always happy to do a show with you and jump on. And even if it wasn't Hughes, I know it'd be interesting, but it's going to be especially interesting because Howard Hughes is this untapped, you've done great research on him and you've pulled a lot of the stuff out into the light, but I think he's just this untapped enigma still. I think there's still stuff to find out about him.
100%. He's fascinating.
Mhm.
I think he is the whole reason why I learned about the Mormon Mafia, because I went backward. I didn't even know about any of this stuff, and I didn't even care about JFK. You guys, now I'm obsessed. But also, I've had Tim on recently for an awesome episode on Theosophy, and that's coming your guys' way probably before this one. So you guys got to check that one out. He's just been doing big things. So
Thank you. I'm looking forward to that. I had a blast talking with you about that too, and I'm glad you brought it up because we should tell people during that show. So we were talking about like Steiner and Helena Blavatsky and just Theosophy. We were not talking about Howard Hughes or portals, but
no.
it came up. It just randomly came up. And I remember thinking after that show, like right when I hopped off that show with you, I was like, maybe we should do something on Hughes. I'm like, I was thinking like, it's kind of weird that came up, and it's kind of weird that we talked about portals, but whatever. And then the next day, I was getting ready for work and just doing some stuff around the house before I left. And I just threw a podcast on, just randomly, just picked one. And it just so happened that there was a lady on the show, the guest. She was talking about Howard Hughes and portals.
So this lady's name is Patrice Chaplin, because Tim heard her on a completely different podcast than me. I found her on this random old podcast, like super old podcast. I sent it to Tim. Tim sent his to me. Greg Carlwood, right? Higher Side Chat episode. Shout out, Greg. You guys are awesome for doing the work you did. And I'm telling you, me and Tim live in each other's brains sometimes. And it's weird because he's like, listen to this. And I'm like, listen to this. And it was the same lady, but different shows. So
it was the same. So I messaged Heidi immediately, and I'm like, you're not going to believe, like, I've had this like string of synchronicities happen since we talked last night. And she already knew, Heidi already knew about like what I was talking about, which that blew my mind. And yeah, it was, I just like Higher Side Chats is kind of like a go-to podcast for me. That's why I threw it on. And he just has this lady on and she's talking about Hughes and portals. But beyond that, it's a crazy, crazy story.
It really is. And then I told you I had a story for you about my mom and portals and Mormons. So that's going to come up too, but it all happened within 48 hours of us talking.
I mean, it's this whole thing is like something out of a movie. It's probably big enough for 2 movies, and it's really one of the biggest, strangest stories I've covered. So, and I'm super happy to cover this because I kind of got sucked into it. It's got castles on mountains, it's got Nazis, portals, occult secrets, Mormons, all this stuff. Mormons. It's like I was thinking about it the other day, and it's got these Indiana Jones vibes. So it's like the best Indiana Jones movie that they never made. That's how I feel about this. It's
honestly, yes, that is so true about Howard Hughes. I think he is highly underrated because all you ever hear all I knew about Howard Hughes before us talking very much was like he was rich, right? Like, oh, he was rich and he made the Spruce Goose. Basically, that was it. Like, I didn't know anything about, and he was a movie star. He went crazy. I knew that. But did he though? Did he go crazy, Tim?
Well, that's what I'm starting to question.
I'm
right there with you. I'm starting to see like these comic book type scenarios play out here where it's like, is he doing this Bruce Wayne double life thing? And I think it's crazy that you mentioned the Spruce Goose, because I was going to ask you, I got a story here that I found. I was going to
Ooh,
ask you if you've heard about this.
do it. Do you know
I
I
was
saw the
gonna,
Spruce Goose when I was a little girl before they
that's
moved it?
that's awesome. I did, yeah. I was looking it up earlier today, and it's this massive plane that was built out of wood that could, obviously it could fly, but it was meant to land. It was like a boat, half plane, half
Mhm.
boat. And from what I read, it said that it was the biggest plane ever up until about 2012 or 2014, something like that. Um, and this is about Hughes and a UFO crash site story. Have you heard this?
Yes.
Okay, I
So,
figured maybe you did.
but keep
But
going. I don't want to
okay,
derail.
well, I was gonna wait for later with this, but I'll just talk about it now. Because this is crazy. So he finished up that Spruce Goose project in 1947. And this story is about this lady named Linda whose father
Oh my
worked with
gosh.
Hughes.
I wrote this on my paper. This is so crazy. I'm not even
Okay,
kidding.
really?
Yeah, keep going.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah,
So
yeah.
it was called the Hercules Plane Project, and it seems like they wanted it to be done for the war, but they just couldn't get it done in time. So whatever, like the war ends, and they ended up finishing it in 47. And this lady came out and said, my dad worked with him on this project, and it all checks out. And this lady, Linda, she's credible. I looked into her; she's credible. And they weren't making, the best part about this is they weren't making outlandish claims. Like,
Mm-mm.
I'm calling it a UFO crash site story just so people understand, but they don't mention UFOs and they don't mention aliens in this. But basically,
But
one
they
of
do mention bodies. They
they
do
mention bodies.
mention bodies.
Basically, Hughes pulls Linda's dad in the office one day and says, I was just in Washington. The government had me go out to a base on my way back here, like I rendezvoused. Um, and they showed me this craft. He said it was a strange aircraft that looked like it had been shot down or had crashed. Uh, so I think that I think it means that it was shot down personally. I think he saw
Mhm.
something to indicate that it was shot down. But he said it was made of a strange material that was extremely resistant to heat, cold, and pressure. And Hughes also said that they showed him bodies of pilots they appeared to be deformed midgets.
Mhm.
And he wants Linda's dad to come in. He's like, I want you to work on this project with me. I want you to help me figure this out. Cause it seems like that's what the government wanted, was like, they wanted to bring him in as like a problem solver, to kind of like figure out what this material was and maybe see if they could back engineer it. So nothing comes out of it. This guy, I think, comes back to Hughes months later and asks about it. And Hughes says nothing came of it. He's like, Hughes was like, I backed out of the project. It was too much hassle, not enough money, and I just didn't want to be involved with it. So,
Mhm.
um, but later on, Linda says, I was thinking about it, and it started to remind me of Roswell, and then it clicked that it was 1947. So
Mhm.
the dates, match up. So it's just a crazy story, but this Linda lady, she's credible. She was like a teacher. She didn't have a lot of reason to lie. She wasn't grifting. She wasn't looking for book
Mm-mm.
deal. She wasn't doing any of that stuff.
She didn't even talk about it till after the 70s and stuff. Like her
Yeah.
dad was telling her way later in life, like way later.
Right. And they weren't pushing the UFO angle. They weren't
Mm-mm.
trying to put this out as a UFO story. It
Right.
just it just seems like it could have been Roswell. That's how we get UFO and all this. So I don't know. They Hughes liked this guy apparently because he had an even temperament, like he could handle his eccentric billionaire personality, I guess.
Yeah.
So it's just
Yeah.
one of these, it's just one in a long list of stories surrounding Hughes. Because I was like you, I always heard about him as being like the eccentric billionaire, but I always kind of heard these little rumors, and I didn't think much about them because that kind of comes with
Mm-mm.
the gig when you're famous. That when you're that famous,
Yeah.
but with Hughes, I think some of these rumors are actually true. And I
Well,
do think he was the go-to guy for the military and for the government for stuff.
He said that. He said that literally they were requesting so much from him. That was one of the reasons why he backed out. And also, it is kind of been a rumor. We can't prove this. How would we? That he had his own hangar in Roswell. And actually, they called him to the site, but then they threw him out because he's so OCD that he wanted everything to be done like his perfect way. And of course, people in the military don't want you over bossing them, right? They were like, get this guy out of here. But he remained having his own hangar there at Area 51. And so that's weird. Like, why the and an actress that he taught how to fly, I can't remember which one it was. She said that he also talked to her about dead beings. So at Area 51. So that's weird. It's super weird. Yeah.
That's what I had heard as well. I think it's that the first contractor, the first private contractor to have a lab at Area 51 was Howard Hughes.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And I think his own hangar and all that stuff too. But he was like the first. So they somehow this guy got in good with the government.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And I don't know that ever ends well. But with Hughes, in his case, who knows? Who knows? Maybe, I don't know. But I know that he was into some weird stuff and the government knew about it. And I think Hughes may have been a little bit above the law in some instances. It's almost like he was allowed to kind of do his own thing. Because once we get into this today, you'll see like that story that we just talked about is not the strangest thing that he was involved with, in my opinion.
No, definitely not. And he's an enigma, but he was well known to buy people, period. He was known to buy his fair share. He literally was always saying, yeah. So he had people buy.
He financed Nixon.
His brother. Yep.
Yeah. It was like when some of Nixon's earliest campaign runs were totally financed by Hughes.
Yes. And so there was a deal. There was actually Nixon is the only reason why Howard Hughes Medical was able to take all of Sumacor and put it underneath the medical center so that he didn't have to pay taxes like that anymore. The IRS had rejected it twice and said, no, we're not doing that. And so they pushed it through because he gave $100,000 loan to Nixon's brother, and it's all unsealed now. Yeah.
Well, see, that's the thing about this guy. He knew how to play politics. And I mean, I hate to like make the cheesy analogy, but he is the real life Bruce Wayne in a lot of ways. He was able to hang in those big, powerful circles and still step away and work with like supernatural stuff, I think. Because we're going to get into that. Because I mean, this story today centers around this old mystical area of Spain. It's near the Pyrenees Mountains. It's right there on the border of Spain and France. And you know, I read a book recently called The Great Cross of Henday, which also deals with this region, where basically you have alchemy encoded in the monuments and cathedrals and the chateaus. People might know about Rennes Chateau from the the Dan Brown thing. That's kind of involved with this too. It's just a very magical area, but this particular area of Girona is known for its energetic sites. So it's got portals. Like, I think the more I've looked into it, I think these are legit portals for real. It's got like an asteroid cradle, a stone cradle. There's a story about an apparition of a lady with a cup that would show up and be seen nearby. And what kind of happened with some of these, specifically like the woman with the cup, the church came in, the Catholics came in, and they tried to squash it. When people kept seeing this lady with the cup, they said, "Oh no, you're seeing Jesus." So they put their spin on it. They tried to make it the holy miracle. But these are like old, like these are older pagan type of strands here that we're working with.
And Babylonian for sure. That one for sure. Yeah. And he knew he gave little hints if people watch him, like he named the spruce goose the Hercules. It actually wasn't supposed to. He hated that they called it the spruce goose. He hated it. That was kind of a poke fun at him in many ways. And also, like with Summa Corporation, Summa means the highest, like of the highest, right? So you can't tell me he didn't know some things. He did. He was letting people know he knew. And if you knew, then you caught it. But like a lot of people didn't, so they just let it go.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh man, there's so much to talk about here. There's so many things that are firing off in my brain right now because I've like really dove into this story.
This is
And
awesome. Yeah.
there's so much to be said about Hughes and I'm like, oh, I don't want to get to that part yet. I don't want to wait. I want to wait. But
well, I'll let you start it up this time because I have little things that I can add in, but I always talk over. So if you're ready, I'll do the opposite this time. Let's
oh
go.
yeah. Oh, you want okay, yeah, I'll go. We'll go.
Yeah.
So all right, well, this region, Hughes was drawn to this region. That's what I've come to see.
Mm.
It's a deeply spiritual place that predates the Catholics. You have Kabbalah and Rosicrucianism and alchemy kind of carved into the landscape here. It's not just in Spain, it's also in France. It's just that whole general area. Patrice Chaplin, the lady who we found on these podcasts, she came to Girona as a young girl when she was 15. And she's had a lot of experiences with these places. I'm just going to call them supernatural places. And she's written these books and she's come forward. She shared her story, and her stories shine a lot of light on just the interactions that take place between people and the supernatural in this area. And I wanted to touch on the Kabbalah part too, because this is an area rich with Kabbalah. There was a huge Jewish presence there at one point, and they were kind of kicked out. But while they were there, the Kabbalah was created and unearthed. Like a lot of secrets of Kabbalah were like just really popping off there, which I think it adds to the mysticism of the place. But it's basically like this Jewish hub, and I just think that that's strange because later when we see a Nazi connection here, it's odd to me that Himmler was sending Nazis into this region to investigate when it had such a strong Jewish presence. I just thought that was a very odd contradiction. But why we're here today, for the most part, is that Patrice said, and others have said, that Hughes was in the area. He was traveling to Girona. And the reason why he was coming there was all centered around portals.
Yes.
I think the quote that I got.
1933. Yeah.
1933.
Yes.
The quote that I got from her is that Hughes was doing what the Kabbalists were doing in Girona back in the day, which was going through portals, using portals.
And they spoke about this. There was a German writer that spoke about this, right? Did you catch this? Otto Rahn?
Yes, I did.
Yeah. And so like it's kind of proof, not just for that one, but there's other ones like they talked about him being El Americano and all this. So there's all these things that these people were like, yes, he was here in Girona. Yes.
He was there.
Like,
there's a bar there named for him. And that was like one of the biggest chunks of proof for me is that when Hughes got there, I think this was in 33. He went into the local bar and he bought everybody around to drinks. Now, they didn't know who he was. They don't know who Howard Hughes is, but it was memorable that he did that. And he didn't drink alcohol, apparently. So while everybody else is drinking, he's ordering or having a glass of milk. So they named this bar the American Milk Bar after Howard Hughes.
Oh,
so yeah, he
funny.
was there.
I didn't know that. I didn't know that
there.
part.
Yeah.
That's funny to me.
And I'll tell you, you brought up Otto Rahn. That is like, so I went back to this podcast again. I had to listen to it twice. The first time I listened to it, I hit you up. The second time, I was just kind of listening more intently to things. And I heard Patrice say, yeah, Hughes visited the area in 33 with Otto Rahn. And like, I paused it. I'm like, did I just hear that? So I paused it and I hit play and I played back and like, sure enough, and like my jaw was kind of open because I know who that is because of my research into Nazi occultism. And I
Yep.
was just like, I can't believe that Otto Ron is involved with this story. What is Howard Hughes doing hanging out with Otto Ron? Ron is the guy who he was SS. He was handpicked by Hitler. He was out there looking for the Grail for the most part. He was looking for the Grail for the Nazis. And I mean, you know, need I say more? Hughes had a Nazi connection big time to the point where he was
Mhm.
hanging out with these guys. So, and it
Well,
just,
and that's one of the reasons why I think he liked Mormons so much, because even
mm,
it's known when he had, full control over the casinos and stuff, that they pushed through the equal rights hiring thing. And he was like, I don't care. I'm not hiring him. I don't care. And that would also give you a reason to what? Have somebody assassinated, because RFK was 100% trying to integrate with MLK and all these things with the
mm,
whole, let's integrate America. And he didn't care. He said, make it go away. I'm not doing it. I won't do it. So he was kind
mm,
of racist horribly. And, it would make sense if they're your friends. Also, Mormons, horribly racist then. They thought they were the fallen, people of the war in heaven. That's why they were black. Like they didn't pick a side at the war in heaven. So they were the fence sitters. And that's why black people couldn't have the priesthood in the church.
mm.
And the Mormon church also, if you ever get into it deep, their theology is very similar to Kabbalah. Just saying.
Oh, I could see that. Yeah.
Well, he
Kabbalah
had a
shows up.
Hebrew teacher. Yeah, he had a Hebrew
Mm.
teacher.
Oh, Smith did. Joseph Smith did.
He did.
Wow, he was so into the occult. It's like it's undeniable. It's so undeniable.
Mhm.
And like even with Crowley, like talking about him in Moonchild, like Crowley liked the guy. Of course he was an occultist. Like that's why
Magician.
Crowley,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And you've brought up too, like the Mormons had a connection with Von Braun, right? Didn't they have
Mhm.
him in a film or something?
They did. And they were also the only people. Well, first of all, the Mormons went there for the Olympics that year with
Hmm.
Nazi Germany. They had people doing the salute. They had their top president of the church at a full-on Nazi dinner with the whole what behind them, the whole
Hmm.
emblem. And I will tell you guys, like they were one of the few people that sent aid to German people after the war. Not the Jews. They
Yeah.
sent aid to the Nazis. So,
It's odd, and I mean, even we see the Catholic Church helped out the Nazis too.
mhm.
It's a weird dynamic. I'm still trying to figure out how that worked because, like, speaking of Himmler, Himmler did not like the Catholics, but and a lot of other Nazis didn't. But yet, at the end of the war, the Pope wouldn't come out and say anything about the killing of the Jews. He just left it alone. And they had those Catholic rat lines where they were helping the Nazis escape. So there was something happening there. And today it seems like what I see with the Mormon Church is it seems like they're making moves to kind of create their own little Vatican. And I don't want to go too far off the rails here with
uh
this, but I just want to
did you
throw that
see
in.
it? Did you see the new you say this, but I'm wondering if you saw that if you haven't, what you just said is profound. Have you seen the new plans for the Salt Lake City church temple, the new one?
No, I have not.
You're gonna freak out. Okay, well,
Yeah.
it's basically a mini Vatican. They made it like a keyhole. They took out the fountain of living waters that was very important to all Mormons. They put in a flag thing like the UN and are telling people to be
Mm,
good global citizens. And to your point, at that time, speaking of Nazis, I don't know if you know this, but one of the most notable Mormons in NASA, you know who Don Lind is? He ran NASA.
mm-hmm,
During the
mm-hmm.
time. Well, he's a Mormon. And
Yeah.
so, this
Oh,
all
wow.
goes together. I don't think that Mormons were just on the sidelines of bringing like people here just through the CIA. I think they were fully functionally integrated with Nazis, period.
And okay, yeah, I'm with you. And people listening, if you're wondering why we're going off on tangents about the Mormons, it's because Heidi's done a series called The Mormon Mafia and Hughes is involved. So I trust us. This is a part of the
Yeah.
story too. Like, and I'm glad you brought up NASA because going back to Patrice Chaplin, uh, a lot of this stuff kind of came to light after she wrote a book in 2007 called The Book of Secrets. And she came out talking about these portals. And she was contacted by NASA / somebody involved with the American space program. Now,
does not surprise.
I've heard her on several interviews now at this point because I listen to a lot of interviews with her, and I will say this: she does, like, things that she said 15 years ago lines up with things she said yesterday. She's very good. Like, you could tell the story is straight. In some interviews, though, I could tell that she did not want to mention that it was NASA. So she'll say it was somebody involved with the American Space Agency or NASA or whatever. So it was somebody associated with NASA. I would imagine, I mean, I can get into this later, but maybe like the NRO, National Reconnaissance
Oh, yeah.
Office, because that's CIA, NASA, and the Air Force. They don't get
Well,
enough
and
airplay.
Skunk Works. Okay, so when RFK was killed, the guy that I proposed probably killed him, his bodyguard for that night, Thane Eugene Caesar. I'm sure you know. He worked for Hughes, but he also worked for Skunk Works. And the person that was the president over that at the time, I'm trying to find his name right now, but I can't. He was the president of Skunk Works at that time, was not only raised in the Philippines, where Caesar went right afterward, but also he's a huge Mormon. And so they like to leave all this part out, but Thane Eugene Caesar was known for being involved with 3-letter agencies as well. He had top security clearance and for NASA and Skunk Works. So I'm sorry, like there's too many connections. Yeah.
All connected here. So I have my suspicions about who exactly at NASA this was. And I do think that it was, because if you look at the NRO, you see a joint agreement between the CIA, NASA, and the Air Force. So that's a smoking gun for me in this story. I think because you'll see the CIA pop back up here soon. So because it's not just Hughes. Hughes had allegiances with all these other agencies, apparently. It's pretty evident, actually. But so anyway, NASA or someone to do with NASA contacts her and questions her about her 2007 book because she talks about portals in there. And the gentleman from NASA was apparently very nice, meant well, and they got along well, and they struck up a conversation. And it was like with talking to NASA that she found out that they wanted to know stuff about artificial portals. And she didn't know anything about that. This was like kind of news to her from what I gathered. But in these conversations with NASA, she also kind of solidified the fact that Hughes had definitely traveled to Girona, like those stories were true, and he had been accompanied with NASA scientists. And seems like they were studying the real portals so they could create the artificial portals. Because the story further goes that Hughes, after traveling to the region, established a base at the base of Mount Cantigu or Canigou. And Canigou is the mountain that people hike up to have an experience with this portal. It's kind of a known thing out there. It's like known but not known, right? Like if they say you should go up there with a guide and stuff, and we'll get into that, maybe like what a portal actually is, but people have been known to go to this mountain for this portal experience. Basically, though, the space agency who contacted her was aware that Hughes had made this portal and had brought something through. They were very concerned about this because it was they made contact with something. Now, I know this is kind of weird. This is where the story gets kind of weird, but this is what she gleaned from talking to NASA, essentially, is that a being from 50,000 light years away. There you go. Yeah.
Yeah.
Established some sort of contact with Hughes. And their concern with this was more that Hughes was being reckless and wasn't establishing like parameters or what they called protective controls, whatever that means. That's what they were more concerned about. And it's almost like it was like an Aleister Crowley, Jack Parsons type of thing, where it's like they seem to be concerned about them not closing this thing properly.
Yes. Yeah. And they were worried about, she called it a quarantine, right? Like the quarantines. And I'll tell you guys, like the whole thing when I study about magic and like the Abramelin ritual or these rituals, they have to have gone through a purification process. And this sounds very similar. And Hughes just didn't care. He didn't care. So,
yeah. So they're asking her about these entities, which you could tell that she thought that that was odd, that they're asking her about this bizarre sci-fi stuff, because this wasn't necessarily like this what she was looking for. That's what I like about this, is that she wasn't trying to sensationalize the story. It's just a lot of this stuff lands in her lap. You know, she could tell that she's that kind of a person. She's the type of person where she'll have mysteries start to unfold around her. I know people like that. That's the vibe I get from Patrice Chaplin. I think that she's legit. And you know, in one of her interviews, she said that this portal that she had gone through, the natural portal in the area, was a gap in the skin of the planet. And that just kind of stuck with me. And
yeah.
I just, you know, that's just, people can think about that, you know, like that's essentially what we're dealing with here. We're dealing with something that we just don't know much about. The general
And
public doesn't know much
also,
about this.
I hate when I can't remember her name. It's Kelly R. Johnson that was the actual founder of Skunkworks. Clarence Leonard Kelly Johnson. And he was over that at that time. And he was a Mormon. Like these people are working together. The portal problem too is that, you know, they knew there were natural ones, like you said, but they said that Hughes recreated this, you know, by all the information he gleaned, like you said, and then he didn't do that protective piece. So I do think it's weird later that in Age of Secrets, John Meyer, who worked for Howard Hughes very closely underneath him, he actually hired John and said, I need you to do some studies on these bombs that they keep setting out in Nevada. And he's like, why? You know, and he's like, I just think it's bad. He seemed really neurotic and worried about it. He's like, I really need to know more information about this. He wanted the bombing to stop. He went so far as getting John Meyer on the AEC's board to actually lobby this. He became one of the first ever to help lobby this whole environmental safety type stuff. But the reason why I think this is important and why he was so obsessed with it is, once again, we're talking about what affects the ether, right? And explosions apparently are one of them. And when we talked last time about the spheres and the 8 sphere and stuff, and even the seance of the 9, they spoke about this stuff. What is the message that they always get from these entities? It's always the same thing, like protect the earth, protect, you know what I mean? Like stop hurting earth, basically.
Yeah.
And so, you know, they knew something we didn't. He wanted that to stop immediately.
Yeah, that's in Bird's diary too. It's like when he went into the inner earth, or the city of glass, or whatever they called it. He, in Bird's diary, he says he went into this like city at the pole, and he met with these sort of like higher entities. And the message that they had for him is what Heidi's saying. It's like they're like, go back to the US and tell them that we're not happy with you guys for setting off that bomb. It was all about blowing holes in the ether, essentially. Which, I don't know how much you know about this, but I heard that Hughes and Jack Parsons were working on a project with NASA to blow holes in the ether, or in the atmosphere or something. Is that what you've heard?
Parsons was working for him for a short time, and I think they were trying to figure out like the whole can you I don't know if they did and did it, like should you, but I don't think they estimated that this was going to have a backwards effect, right? Like they were just so obsessed with getting out that things getting in, I don't even think mattered to them.
Right? Yeah. That's the story with this portal, I think. Hughes was so consumed with just getting it done. And we'll get into this, but he was also going into these portals.
Oh yeah.
And we'll save that for later probably, but like, Jack Parsons, CIA, NASA, Von Braun, there's a lot of big
Crowley.
names in this story. Yeah, there's a lot of very powerful players here with long reaching alliances, we'll just put it like that. And like the CIA too. Like one of the things that Patrice talks about, she's got 3 books out on this that kind of talk about this. And I wasn't able to read those because I didn't have time, but I was able to scan. And one of the things she talks about is that in Girona, the CIA started snooping around because you have this portal site, you have this lady with the cup, you have this stone cradle, this magic rock. It's like an asteroid thing. So CIA was definitely there making themselves known, getting to know the locals. And there's a big part in one of her books where the CIA guy brings in Dan Brown. Just the
and
author,
the
Dan
magic
Brown.
rock, dude, the magic rock got me because Mormonism was
Oh,
founded
yeah.
upon a magic rock and an angel, and it's called an Elohim, which is a title, not a name. So it's fascinating to me that when they brought up the rock, even when they bring up the 2-eye stone in Dark Journalist, right? Like it always strikes me as like, oh my gosh, like,
well, you've got Islam too, that's centered around this magic rock, Kaaba stone or whatever it's called. Which I don't want to go too far off the rails, but that was once at Petra, I believe, and it was an asteroid, I think. And it's these stones are associated with entities, though. They're associated with entities coming to Earth. If you look at the research I've looked at to do with Petra, that stone that's such a big part of Islam today seems to be like an asteroid associated with another being. Sounds like that's the case for
Joseph Smith.
Yeah, the Joseph Smith
stone. A being came. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. And that's the case with this story
conjured. Too. Yeah, he conjured it and used the stone, I believe. I mean, with the parchments that I see, he was doing magic. We're back to Martinism. He was actually practicing Solomonic magic, calling this being down, using these stones. Like they knew, like, do they know the repercussions of it? Oh, clearly not. I think Crowley was doing the same thing out at that weird house with the Loch Ness. I think he took off and left it because he couldn't figure it out. But I'm just telling you guys, like, a stone comes up constantly in Atlantis, with the Nazis, with Muhammad, with Joseph Smith. Now we're at Howard Hughes. So.
Yeah. And it's directly associated with Muhammad in that case, because I believe Muhammad lived at Petra, was born at Petra. That's another show for another time. But
fascinating. Yes.
We're starting to see a common thread here with these magic stones, and like people in this area of Girona, the Kabbalists were working not only with portals, but they were working with this stone. And even Salvador Dali, the painter, was working with this stone. Like, and if I can later, I'll show you a picture of something to do with that with him. But so he's a part of this. So Patrice Chaplin, this author who's kind of laid a lot of this out for people. She married Charlie Chapman's son. So she kind of had access to this world.
Charlie Chaplin, the
performer, I think.
Actor? Like with the funny mustache?
Yeah.
He had an assistant that worked for him that was a Mormon. And he became a crazy murderer. I did a whole story on this on my Patreon.
Really? That's so cool. So creepy,
kidding.
But cool. Wow.
A tranny murder, nonetheless.
Yeah.
Anyways.
Well, he had kids.
That's what they called it. Sorry, I'm not being disrespectful. That was what they called it back then. I think actually, anyway, technically it might have just been a cross dresser, but it was in the paper. So not a Heidi slur.
So I don't know what the connections this guy had to his dad, but he was Chaplin's son, and she was married to him at one point. So she had access to kind of like Hollywood people through that. And she was in circles with, a lot of influential and powerful people like Salvador Dali. That's what I came to find. And like, Patrice wrote a book that was turned into a movie that starred Jodie Foster called Siesta, and came out, I think, in 1987, if I'm remembering correctly. And I think that this is interesting because I heard her talking about this in interviews, and she said, I based that movie off of my experience with real life portals. So there's this Jodie Foster movie out there based on people traveling in portals. And in the movie, apparently it's based around her going through a portal and then coming out and just, she's dealing with like memories and stuff. I don't know. I haven't seen it, but I'm going to watch it.
Wow.
So
That's weird. And I do want to mention, because this is annoying. I have bronchitis. I've been super sick. This is an inhaler. I don't smoke. I don't know why that's such a big deal to everybody, but it isn't.
when people are like, oh, why are you vaping? Is that?
Yeah, they're like women and your weird smoker voice. I'm like, I'm sick.
Please. It's
Anyway.
like these guys that like comment
Ugh,
on girls with tattoos. Like, who cares? Get over it. It's not
I
very
know.
living. It's not ladylike. Like,
Goodness. Yeah. The-
yeah. So,
So
another
the
big thing.
entity, that black, they called it the black box, right? Did you get to that part? This entity that wanted to come visit from 50,000 light years away,
Oh no.
so when I heard that, and I heard it called the black box, right? And then I
Mhm.
started thinking about that AI black box that they talk about that has to be kept at sub-zero. Have you heard about this? Listener?
No. Oh yes, I
So
know about that. I know about the it's called the it's Jordy Rose Kindred
called Demon.
AI's
Demon.
supercomputer.
Yeah, like the demon is the name of the
D-Wave.
super. Yeah.
Hmm.
Now it's the demon processor or whatever, but black box hit me weird. You know, I thought about that and I was like, maybe it's AI. We're back to dark journalist hands up on that one, because he talks about the Belial group and all these weird things that have an offshoot of this. And it wouldn't surprise me one little bit if they made contact, because
And the Ahriman.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, no, Steiner's work uh is very reflective of stuff we're seeing in modern times. And I even heard that Steiner was talking about some of this stuff. I'm trying to remember what Patrice says, but
Belial, yeah, Belial is the AI, like Ahriman is like the good side and Belial's like the bad side, I guess,
yeah.
in these groups. And I mean, it's it was
Oh,
shocking.
it was so this magic black, or actually it's a blue rock, this asteroid that fell to Girona. Um the legends there is that, and I know I'm throwing a lot of legends at people. I'm not talking about the 50,000 light years entity now. I'm switching gears. Like, there's this stone there. Um, Salvador Dali was interested in it. And uh, the legend there was that it was Lucifer's stone, that 5,000 years ago, Lucifer had come to Earth in this stone. So, but at the
People
same
hear that when
time,
you follow religions. Sorry.
yeah. But at the same time, it may not have been Lucifer, because if you go
Right.
further back, it just the legend was that it was a child of light that came from Venus,
Okay, but what does Lucifer say he comes as? A being
light
of
bearer.
light. Yeah, light
Yes,
bearer.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So yeah, and that's what Steiner was kind of talking about, how like uh that Lucifer did come from Venus or something like that. I don't know. This gets kind of dense, but
Mm,
Steiner's a big part of this. But and there's this crazy Luciferian angle to this story too, obviously. I mean, and it's kind of crazy that the night that I was looking at the Luciferian angle of this, which I'm not crazy about, by the way, but I had to look
right.
at it because it's part of the story. The same night that I was looking at that, Spain, this area had the blackout.
Oh. Oh man.
Did you hear about that?
Oh,
That big
yes.
blackout? Yeah.
Yes. Oh, wow. Huh.
So, and
Well, they
I
do
know I'm kind of
say,
all over the road here, so I'll try to rein it in.
yeah.
But go
Well,
ahead.
I
What were you
mean,
saying?
they say there's many Satans that have come,
Mm-hmm.
so I
Mm-hmm.
mean but they do talk about Belial being the one that's over this world. Like it's also similar to a Lucifer. And so maybe these things, I mean, we can say, it's not real or it's just a story, but you guys got to look at it. I mean, I don't know. Wanted to come say hi. What does AI want you to do? It wants you to feed things into it about
Yeah.
you or what you think or what people. So who knows? I don't know. It's
Yeah.
weird.
Yeah. Well, I think Steiner was pretty spot on with his Sphere Ahriman stuff, because it does seem
Mhm.
like what he was describing there was an entity that was helping us not only facilitate AI and build the computers and create the means, but also create a pathway for that entity to come through and further influence us.
Right.
And just eventually take over, if you want to consider Neuralink and people merging with the machine itself. You could see that, but it starts with, like, some people think it starts with 1947 and that's Roswell event, where like little pieces of technology were given to us. And it's like, here you go, back engineer this, figure this out. This will help your civilization. But with this story with Spain, like, I know I've probably thrown a lot at people, but like, I'll just break it down real quick. Like, what I see happening here is like a couple things. You've got portals on top of Mount Cantigu. You have, in the same region, this big black or blue asteroid rock that's associated with a child of light that came from Venus, who was watched over by this goddess. It's got Ishtar vibes all over it for me. You also have a priest who came in and built a second tower. It's called the Two Towers of Girona. And the towers somehow incorporate and work with the portal. So you have that. And then it's at the base of that tower behind the chapel where you see this, you get these legends of this lady with the cup showing up, this apparition. So I just want to lay that out. Like, that's all in this one little area. And now we've got Hughes in the mix, right? And this lady, we've got this lady, this author. I really enjoyed listening to her talk on these interviews. Now, there's something else that stuck out to me about this. She made friends out there in Girona with a Norwegian pilot, who knew Hughes. And this guy confirmed that Hughes had set up basically some type of an underground base, where he said he went in one time and he said there were soothsayers, CIA, Nazi scientists,
oh boy,
and Hughes all in this. And I'm assuming they had figured out this was part of that base at the bottom of Mount Cantigu that NASA was questioning her about. So it seems like, of course, they had figured out how to make portals, and they had figured out how to replicate them. And
don't you find it interesting too that, like, okay, Elon Musk is like involved with what? Tunnels, digging, the Boring Company, Mormons. His main dude's a Mormon. Like, all these weird things and then it doesn't make any sense. Like, really, they're just digging dirt out for these Tesla cars underneath Las Vegas. No, I
know, right?
Yeah. So same thing back then, right? With these other power people, I compare it because, I mean, Hughes and him often get compared. I don't think there's a real comparison because Elon's been handed a lot and Hughes really was the genius that I think he was,
Yeah.
But he's there all the time. I mean, at this stuff. So, yeah.
I'm going to show you something. I sent a request to share screen.
Got it. There you
go. Right. So
super interesting.
Yeah. So back to the stone. There is another stone that was found in the region of Spain. This isn't too far away. And I found a picture of it. It's in a church out there. Some people say that this was that part of that same asteroid that fell that brought the child of light. And you can see it's very black, right? But it's almost blue. It's so black, it's almost blue. It's a smooth stone. And so this is in a church. I believe that this is right across the border in France, in La Puy. Here, I'll show you a picture of the town.
Very wild.
There we go. La Puy, Lepuy. And this is the town. And look at this. This is what they did. They built this church up on top of this mountain. It's like the high places in the Bible, Heidi.
Yep.
Like, all throughout the Old Testament, God is telling the Israelites to tear down or not to go up to the high places to worship these other entities. It probably has something to do with this portal stuff.
Oh, yeah. Yep. That's weird. That's
and in Girona, you have two of these towers just like this one that a priest built to interact with the portals.
You should look at the Mormon Salt Lake City temple
Yeah, I should.
The way, you don't have to right now, but that tower, they've got those on every single temple ever. And why did they settle here? I often wonder if it's because this is a huge mountainous area. Like, there are mountains everywhere. It's not the best area to settle. It's a hard place to live. Like, if you didn't have modern day, there was a lake full of salt, and it's way more salty than the ocean, like 10 times or something like that. I can't remember, but you can't drink it. And there's mountains everywhere. The climate's weird. Sometimes we have snow clear till May. It's not great for growing. I mean, people always ask me that. Why there? I'm like, I think it's these mountains.
Yeah, it's high places, and like we were talking about digging holes in the earth, you get there's magical workings associated with both, with being up high, and I think interacting with portals like the Tower of Babel and that sort of thing.
Yes.
And then you've also got your inner earth legends like Agartha, and
yeah.
it's a legend. People talking about other entities living inside the earth is something you get out of legends sprinkled across all of antiquity.
Yes. Yep.
So,
and the magic associated with all of these groups, people always say, well, I think it's the Catholics, or I think it's this, or I think it's that. I'm like, I think it's magic / Freemasonry. Like, they can come together on one common thing. And I think all of them hold little things, probably these stones that you're talking about. The Catholics have some, the Mormons have some, like all these things. It makes you really wonder if that's, their leverage. Plus, then he who holds the king, and the Mormons held, Howard Hughes pretty much hostage for quite some period of time, and kept him till his death. I mean, he was, so whatever he knew at that point, I mean, weird. He wanted to be cryogenically frozen. This is from his guy John Meyer, again, in that Age of Secrets book, and they say they say he died a long time before when he really died, and that he was frozen in this cryogenic coffin that he went and purchased for him. John Meyer actually bought that for him, so that he had seen him in it. And I think that's very weird, but that he didn't go crazy, right? Like, that he jumped too many times. And
that's what I was going to say. He went through portals, it seems like.
Kept coming back, like younger or older, missing time, blah, blah, blah. And it messed with him, really badly. So weird.
They said people around him were saying that Hughes had essentially fried his nerves by going through pathways. I think that was one of the words that either the CIA or NASA used. They called them pathways. That's what Hughes was working with. That's why he assembled this team. He had like clairvoyant, mystic soothsayers, psychics. He had these Nazi scientists, and he had CIA. These are all groups that are very much interested in this sort of dark side of reality. We see it in the CIA documents. They're totally always looking for ways to pierce the veil and to do supernatural things. And the Nazis were doing the same thing. And it seems like Hughes just assembled a group of all these people and had this bunker down there. And they were saying that
but they said it's mental. It wasn't real. Like, it was like a mental jump. They said this is all done in your etheric body, right? So this is weird to me, knowing what we know about how much they've been pushing people to go do ayahuasca, go do this and that. Like, they're piercing the veil over and over and over again. And we know that they've done many, many experiments with this. I mean, they have, period. The CIA, the FBI, all of them have done these experiments.
Did you hear that a minute ago in your headphones?
It was buzzing. Yeah.
No, it was like somebody like it's like a scream.
That might have been my grandson. He just left. Yes.
Okay.
If it was a baby,
wild.
Unless
no,
it's
it wasn't. No, it was it's like an EVP kind of a thing.
Oh no, I did not hear that.
Okay.
We'll every time me and Tim talk, man. Every time me and Tim talk, something weird happens. Like, really, you guys would be surprised.
Do you know, like in like some rock bands in the middle of their show, they'll like throw some effect on their vocals and it'll sound like
Oh yeah.
electronic. It sounded like somebody yelling through one of
My
those.
ears, my ears were buzzing. I thought you might have turned up your headphones because it got really loud and was like buzzing in my ear. And then you just said that. So that was weird.
Yeah, no, that's we'll see if it shows up in the thing. But yeah, like but I'm thinking about like these legends of Hughes and like, you know, the common, I guess the common narrative, like there's YouTube video after YouTube video about how he went crazy. Eccentric billionaire goes crazy, locks himself in the, you know, the top of a whatever it was, a hotel or something, and grows his fingernails out long and just becomes isolated. Was that
with only the Mormons taking care of him? Yeah.
Yeah. Was that real?
Which
or is that just a facade so he can sneak out and go hang out with his comic book characters? You know,
I sometimes feel like they were keeping him and drugging him. I because of the amount of needles they found broken off in his body after the autopsy, I think at some point they were keeping him as a hostage. He was found so thin and all these things. I mean, with ulcers in his skin, like I just can't imagine you would sit there that long. But then was he not sitting there, and was he doing it mentally and not caring about that stuff? Because if it is etheric body, was he time traveling still or slipping out? Because then we see these things combined with the Seance of the Nine and Puharovich and everything, and then Hughes, like all these people that are contacting these things, what are they doing? They're doing it in they're channeling. So was he channeling to a point where he could just not care about food? He didn't care about the physical. Was he not living in this physical realm? Was he living in the etheric? Because Patrice says, if you get to do this and you hop, like where you go further, it's further than death, literally. So would he not care anymore? Like, would he not eat? Would he not, you know, and drug induced even more?
Yeah.
It's helping. Yeah.
It seemed to be like what the Norwegian pilot thought too, because I think she said she asked him about had Hughes really gone crazy, and he said no, he didn't go crazy. He just changed. That going through these pathways or portals changed him. They that she kept saying like sometimes a cockroach would look like a dinosaur, shapes would be different. I mean, it seems like his reality had become bent, almost as if you've taken too much acid, like Sid Barrett from Pink Floyd or something. Like he never was the same guy after all that.
Well, and with the Abramelin, and the one thing I found very strange when she spoke, okay, she said this: the adepts can go and come back and not have any of these problems, okay, because they are prepared. And when you do this Abramelin ritual or any of these rituals, you have to, like, Crowley was doing this like for long periods of time before he would do any of these rituals where they're like, he stopped having sex, he started being almost pious, like started fasting, blah, blah. There's all these things you guys have to look into. But when she said adept, I'm like, that's magic. That's a magical word. That isn't something that you say to, like, oh, these people that, you know, knew what they were doing, or these, you know, think of a better word, like specialists or whatever. She didn't call them that. She called them an adept.
Yeah.
And so
I think he was preparing himself ritualistically, like you would for an occult ritual, preparing himself to enter the portals. Because she also said you had to train before you go into these.
And that there were people there to help, but he didn't do that. He would do it by himself. And so, you know, that's like what with ayahuasca, they say, don't do it by yourself, right? Don't do certain things. They have like a shaman to help them.
Shaman.
Yeah. And so, like, this makes sense to me that maybe he was doing this through, you know, his meds by himself, and not, or maybe the Mormons were helping him. And I'll tell you a little story about that, unless you want me to go now, but it was very strange. Yeah. Before I ever said anything to my mom about this, she just comes over one day and leaves this story with me. Mom, you got me with this one. my mom's not too woo woo. I mean, she was back in the day, because she, you know, 70s, you know, whatever, but she just comes over and lays this on me one day about this place in Arizona where my uncles were. And I said, I think my uncles were involved in some of this Mormon mafia stuff because I know they were high up in the church, where this fancy bloodline in the church, blah, 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 all this stuff. But there was some things about my uncle where if he wasn't, then he was involved with the mob. Okay. Because it was all linked to Las Vegas and casinos, and he could get you a room anywhere. And I remember he did that for me for my honeymoon. And like, it was like these fancy, fancy suites and comps and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, that's really weird. But like, he could just do that at the drop of a pin. And my mom said, well, they had them go out first, the one brother, then the second brother, and they both had been in the military, by the way. I'm certain they were Freemasons. And she said, they told me this weird story about Snowflake, Arizona. And I almost dropped my cup because I was like, that is where this other person told me that the Mormon church was involved with some really satanic stuff. And she was like, yeah, it was there. And they were helping people in and out of time travel portals. And I was like, are you kidding me right now? And she's like, well, they were just there helping them in and out. She doesn't know about this story. She didn't know about this lady. She didn't know anything about this. Right. And so I was like, what? And I just was a little like shocked. I was like, okay. It just seemed like wild. And then that was all. And I was like, all right, that was weird, and it was right around the same time frame that we talked. She'd never told me this ever before. And guess who the person was that told me about Snowflake, Arizona? And he could have made it way grander. He could have made it, like you said, like if it was a lie, he would have told me a lot better stuff, right? He said these Mormons that were involved with my Luciferian family, he didn't talk about time travel, none of that. He did talk about baby delivery stuff, and I'll leave it there, about delivering body pieces. Okay, we'll say that was Nathan Reynolds.
Yeah.
The Luciferian story. So I was like, this is weird because it all kind of went together, and I hadn't released some of the shows yet. She didn't know because I don't send them to her early.
Well, Reynolds said that I've heard him on shows and I've listened to his story, and he talks about how his family was going to these sites over here in North America and getting artifacts out of them and using that to get in touch with, to channel essentially. Yeah. So
he would have told me that but that wasn't, I just said,
a portal site. That's right. Probably a portal site here. It's like Geronimo. They said that Geronimo, the big medicine man, he had, these shamanistic qualities. Geronimo could enter portals and use them to travel. And this was just known that he did that.
So just so you mentioned Geronimo, which is so funny because I just brought him up the other day because these certain people believe, I can't remember what I was researching. Oh my gosh, I was so deep down the rabbit hole. But they said that they live inside of their skull. Okay, that your actual, when you leave your body, I think I was in with Steiner stuff, and that when you leave, that your skull is where your body, like your real brain, okay, or whatever, your spirit lives. And what did they keep of Geronimo's? His skull. Yeah. And that blew me away, knowing that Skull and Bones did that, but Skull and Bones was also set up. The only other place that I know of that was sanctioned is here in Utah by the Skull and Bones Society themselves, because it was the family members of the Mormons that came here. And it's here to this day. Yes, that is wild. It's here to this day. University of Utah has a Skull and Bones chapter, and they have an Allen key, not Scroll and Key, but Allen key. And the actual members that set up the one there at Yale, okay, they were the ones that were his family members. So I'm researching further back. Well, the doctor that started the actual medical school in Yale is distant cousins with Joseph Smith, and his last name is Smith. His name is Dr. Nathan Smith. So, and he was known as a body stealer. Like, he got ran out of Dartmouth because he set up Dartmouth Medical School first. They ran him out of town there, and he ran and set up a new one at Yale. But lo and behold, you know who he was the teacher of? Joseph Smith's brother. So there's that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Just and I know the Mormons too have this deep affinity for these North American artifacts as well. They
Well,
love these
and
magical artifacts.
they talk about one of our key passwords in the temple is talking about the sinews and the bones and on posterity. I'm sorry, but when I heard it on a freaking confessionals episode by some guy that was talking about the Nephilim, and I almost fell off my chair because I knew what he was talking about. But that's not something that you hear because Mormons don't repeat that. That is one of their most sacred password. It's a password to heaven through the veil, talking about the sinews. And I was like, oh my gosh. Like, and they said that it lives like in these dry bones and in the sinews. And I believe that that has to go back to the Nephilim and giants and all that too.
Yeah,
like,
for sure.
Together. Yeah.
Well, the picture that I'm starting to get here is that these portals are here. They're a natural part of the earth. Um, and it's just like everything else. Our knowledge of it has been lost or it's been obfuscated. You know, we know how the elites like to rob us of our true history and our true purpose and our true abilities. This was something, and I don't know, I'm not going to say that portals were good or bad, but it seems like they were a natural part of this earth and this was known. At one point, this was kind of known about, or it was accepted. It was
And why
accepted
did they
like,
go? Why did they go take down all those circular? What are they called? Like the parks. They had these. I just got that buzzing in my ears again. Just FYI. Those circular. They weren't called portals, gateways or whatever. They took them all down. You know what I'm talking about?
yeah,
Like, why did they do that? They were
yeah,
markers for something, I
yeah.
believe. What to your point?
Because I think what I've come to find here is that when people go into this, it's not like it's in the movies. It's not like some swirling liquid that you like step through. I think you go into an area and all of a sudden you're on a mental trip like you would be with drugs. Like you're seeing shapes, you're seeing time differently. It's almost like entering the astral realm, like remote viewers would or something. And I don't
because
know
it's
that,
ethereal. Yeah, she
yeah,
said it was in the ethereal body. So that
yeah.
makes so much more sense when you start thinking about like why did we go to the Middle East? We were there looking for Nimrod's bones. I'm
Oh, for
sorry, I think
sure.
they got them. And why were the Nazis so obsessed with crap like this? Okay. Like we know that it says certain things about the bones. Like they're obsessed with this shit, and
Yeah.
those mystery schools that continued on and went to Howard Hughes, Mormons, Nazis, NASA, whatever, they've got this key Catholics for sure. They've got this key stuff. Why do they bury their people underneath the damn churches or in glass cases? Because they know that the power is in there, right? Like,
Yeah. And they build their stuff right on top of pagan sites to begin with.
yes. Yep.
I'm gonna try to pull this up real quick and show you something.
Awesome.
Because Salvador Dali said that he gave a lot of indication that he was working with portals, and that he was going into portals. So much so that he designed this place after one of his portal trips. It's called I don't know how to say this, let's be honest. Perpignan or something like that station. And you see like it's got this guy on he looks like somebody's falling through a portal essentially.
That's
But
so weird.
inside of this place is kind of crazy. And there's a painting out there, and I don't remember what it's called, or I'd pull it up. But Dali was actually incorporating, he was trying to reproduce his portal experiences in his art. And this place was a part of that. Like he designed this after, see, it says here, Dali proclaimed it to be the center of the universe after experiencing a vision of cosmogonic ecstasy there in 1963. And here's the painting.
How weird.
And he made this painting, and this is based on his experiences in a portal. And look, you can tell, like there's a guy that's floating, and time and space is like different. Like there's no
Hmm.
floor, there's no ceiling. Everything's different, right? Because you're in a portal.
How weird.
And
Wow.
Patrice Chaplin also talked about this in one of her interviews because she knew Dolly,
Hmm.
and she said that he kind of like explained this situation to her, and he was in a portal. And
Hmm.
she said the way he explained it was even more compelling than this actual painting was. Like it was that real for him.
Wow.
It's crazy.
That is weird. I'm gonna have to look up if he had anything to do with Mormons because I haven't done that as of yet with Dolly. And I mean, it just seems like these people all have a piece of the puzzle. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter that they're religion. Okay. People always think I'm just dissing on people because of religion. It doesn't matter to me. They're groups and they continue. This goes back to even further than Babylon, but I always like to say Babylon. You know, these people, the Nazis, the Mormons, all of them, all these people have a piece of the pie. And now what we're seeing is a lot of flexes because the Mormons built their temple down the street from the Vatican. Now they're shaping their stuff like a Vatican keyhole. They always are talking about the keys, that they have the key to the priesthood. They have the keys of truth, that they're the only ones that have the key. So I think everybody's at this weird level right now where they're like, watch me flex, like, or they're calling the game. The card game is called. Everybody's got to throw their cards on the table and show what they have, right? But something really weird that I found is that they bought Westminster Abbey.
The Mormons
Why?
did?
Yeah. Why the like why
Portal
would that?
site. It's a portal
Yeah.
site. It's gotta be.
So
No, but
I'm just telling you guys, like I think they know some things and look at their stuff, always mountains and different stuff. Like it's
mm,
weird, and they go very deep. Their South American ties. Right
yeah.
around the time we're talking about Mr. Mustache disappearing.
Yeah.
Um
Right, right.
gets they start letting, Latin Americans into the church, and now they're some of the biggest members of the church. And I'm sorry, but it's very strange,
Yeah,
like where they
they're
were.
making
Yeah.
moves. And I
Yeah.
think, I think it we'll see where it goes, but
We should show
this
that picture of the new Salt
yeah.
Lake City temple. Put Salt Lake City temple design
All right.
2025 just to show people how very close it is to the Vatican, because I didn't know we were going to talk about that today. So I should have had that. But if we can show it, it would be great because it's so similar. Like they are literally flexing on the Catholic Church right now.
Let's
I'm
see if
like,
it'll
oh
let
my
me.
gosh. Yeah.
Yeah. It seems like they're making moves to for stuff that we might see. Is it United Lab?
Uh, if you put in Salt Lake City Temple 2025 and
Okay.
see if that will come up.
All right. I might have to change some things
It
here,
might.
but
If not, it's okay. But let's see the new design. Maybe new design. Put new right there
I
and
didn't
see.
put temple in. That's probably the problem.
Oh yeah, new temple design.
Or I'll put new. Is this it right here? Or I'll put new in there. See if
Oh,
that works.
the grounds. Hopefully it will. If not, I'll get it and I'll add it because it's very interesting. They're not showing the part that they're just showing the building. But do you see the spires? See
Mm-hmm.
those spires? I will find the new plans for it because it looks just like the Vatican.
Yeah, well, they're making moves, and
Mm-hmm.
it could be the type of moves that we're going to see, or that we do see when you get into these latter books of the Bible, like the Book of Revelation. Who
Yes.
knows? Who knows? But with
Weird.
Hughes, I just like Hughes has just fallen out of the clear blue sky in my research.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this story just came knocking for me. And like
Yes.
I know it was already on your palette. Like you've been looking into Hughes, but I was not expecting to find this portal stuff with him and all
So
these
weird.
connections with him. And as I'm looking into this, I'm starting to think like, oh, I think that this has influenced pop culture.
Mm-hmm.
And as I'm researching Hughes and specifically this Girona portal site and his involvement with that, I just had this thought and I was like, this reminds me of the Silver Surfer. the original Silver Surfer,
Mm.
like that comic book character that seemed to like be able to travel through space time. And so I looked into this. I followed the rabbit hole with this one. And that comic first came out in 1966. So
Oh.
it totally could have been based on him. But get this. It was created by Jack Kirby. Jack Kirby worked with Stan Lee at Marvel. It was Kirby and Stan Lee who literally based Tony Stark, Iron Man, off of
Oh.
Hughes. So
Oh,
we
wow.
know we know that these comic book creators were using Hughes as a template for sure.
It
And
does not
I just
surprise.
I think that he could
Mm-mm.
have influenced some of these other comic book characters too. And I
For
mean,
sure. Or
Kirby's
what if or what if it's what he saw in there, like you said, the
yeah.
like the demons that they're bringing through, they're associated with these rocks or entities, we won't say demons. Entities, maybe these are all associated. Like what if they're really like, cuz he has that stone in his chest,
Yeah,
Could be
yeah,
similar.
exactly. I think all that ties in because Kirby,
Very
here's a
strange.
here's a clip from or a comic, a little piece of a
Mm,
comic art from Silver Surfer, and it looks like a portal. Like it looks,
yeah, it does.
this is what they were
And
describing.
he's got his cord of life, like
Yeah.
what Anton LaVey describes.
He's got the
Mm.
cord, yep, like the silver cord that they talk about.
Mhm,
And
mhm.
even it says here, I've done it. I'm drifting into a world of limitless dimensions. It's the
Mm.
crossroads of infinity, the junction to everywhere.
The hexagonal shape is
Yeah.
what they say that our world looks like in the sky too, you know? Do you
hmm
know that? Yeah.
Yes. And it's on what? It's on top of Saturn, allegedly, too, right?
Mm, very strange.
And these guys, I mean, this is an interesting guy, this Jack Kirby guy, by the way, because he was also naming characters Metatron. Like he had a
Metatron is a big deal in the Mormon church, PS.
And we know like Enoch, right? Enoch Metatron.
Hmm.
I'm assuming that's where they're deriving that from.
I'm
And
assuming. And Melchizedek. You've heard that word
mhm,
before with dark journalists.
yep. And let's see, Kirby did a series called New Gods. He did Thor, and he did the Eternals.
Mm,
So I think it's a big combination of all this occult stuff that we've seen in comic books since the 40s, since
so
the 60s,
strange.
since going way back. I just
Well, and just so people know that they say we live for time and all eternity in the Mormon church.
mhm.
So, yeah,
And I
that's
just
why we
thought
do this
too,
stuff. Yeah, for the dead people.
oh yeah, yeah. It's all connected. I mean, you see the influence of
It's
the
mystery
occult and
school.
everything.
Uh-huh. Mystery schools. That's I'm convinced. I'm convinced at this point. Like, I mean, some people know more than others, or maybe not more, but different.
Hmm
But 100% it's mystery schools, I
Yeah.
think.
Well,
Yeah.
that's what the Germans were looking for. That's what the Nazis were looking for. That's why they had Otto Rahn out there in this area
So
of Spain.
weird.
And Ron was a member of this major cult network, and
Was
he
he
wrote.
Thule? Was he
Yeah,
the
he
Thule? Yeah.
was. He absolutely was. He was definitely in the Thule Society. Um, he wrote a book called Crusade Against the Grail. He was like looking into like that Christ bloodline, but also the Nazis seemed to be more interested in the Nephilim priest king bloodlines.
I'm sure they are because
Yeah,
Nimrod became a mighty man of old. So they're going to want to know how to do that for themselves, right?
yeah, yeah. Um, Ron was in close contact with Carl Villiget, who claimed to be a descendant of like the Germania, the original Aryan Nephilim, essentially Germans. Like so, all that stuff's a part of this,
The
and
Great White Brotherhood.
yeah,
Yeah.
and they were influenced by the mystery schools. Just to go back to that, like that's where the Nazis were getting all these
Mhm.
ideas. They would twist things and kind of put a different kind of a turn on things so that they weren't they would never say that we got this from Freemasonry, for instance, or we got
Right.
this from
Right.
Rosicrucianism. They would take the idea from there and then they would twist it and make it their own. But they definitely got, but it doesn't stop the fact that they got the ideas from the mystery schools in the first place. Um,
Very strange.
yeah, I mean,
Hmm.
I don't know, and it's just this area of the Pyrenees Mountains was just a big revelation for me. There's so many mysteries there. You've got Rennes Chateau and the Cross of Henday, and like there's 100 shows within this one show. There's 100 rabbit holes here. It's so
Hmm.
it's great. You know, I love this kind of stuff.
Wow. Yeah, yeah, this has been great. I mean,
Mhm.
it explains a lot too about Hughes and why sometimes he would look different, right? Like I get that they say that he had body doubles or whatever, and maybe so. But it's very interesting to me that if he were coming back and forth and maybe he sustained an injury, or maybe, he went back and was younger or older or whatever. And it does make me question things like Trump's time traveling son stuff. And, uh,
Karen.
it makes you wonder. It also makes me wonder, I don't know if you've noticed, but this presidency, Trump has aged excessively, very quickly. And I
Hmm.
know people will say, well, he's an old man. He's been an old man. He's aged a lot in the last year.
Hmm.
It's like rapid. And that's exactly what happened with Hughes. He started aging and all these different things. So it makes you wonder, like, what are they doing in the ethereal? They know this stuff. And he's Jesuit college. So don't you guys get it twisted.
Oh yeah, and we know that he was close with Nixon. Trump was very close with Nixon.
Very,
Nixon apparently was close with Howard Hughes. So there's that.
very. Hmm. And all of them, were kind of against the Kennedys. Not that the Kennedys were so great. They were another bag of mess. But here's the problem is I think that it's just different factions, like you said, warring for different things. And they were trying to bring in that integration, with Martin
Hmm.
Luther King and everything. And they were absolutely not having it because not just because they were racist, but the great white brotherhood stuff that we talk about, it's important. I mean,
Yeah.
people can say it's not true, this and that. Fine. Like I always say, it doesn't matter what we believe. It matters what they believe.
Yeah.
Period.
And I gotta throw this in because or
Absolutely.
before we go, the Luciferian part of this. Like I say, I wasn't thrilled about this, but so I'm Otto Ron, right?
Hmm.
He's the Nazi. You said it. You're right. He's in the Thule Society. This is one of the guys who Hughes was palling around with in 1933. This was like a guide for him, I think,
Hmm.
because Otto Ron was,
He's the teacher. He's
yeah,
probably his teacher.
Ron
He's
knew the
probably the
area.
adept. No,
Hmm.
I mean,
Oh, I know what
of
you mean.
magic.
Oh
Hmm.
yeah, well, he was in the Thule Society. He was well familiar with that kind of a thing. Um, that came with the territory there. But so Ron wrote a book called Lucifer's Court,
Hmm.
where he documents how he goes to this area of Spain, the Nazis sent him there, and he documents everything, and he goes through that region like a historian would. He tells you the
Hmm.
history, but he's also looking for the Grail, and he's also looking for the supernatural stuff. So I looked in that book. I had to. I'm like, this is too crazy. So I read some of this Lucifer's Core, and it gets into the fact that people in this area consider themselves, I think, to be Luciferian. If they don't call themselves
Hmm.
that, they certainly have these Luciferian beliefs. And it goes back to this
Wow.
stone cradle that we talked about earlier. Um, they believe that Lucifer came in that as a kid, I guess, came in that asteroid, almost like a pod in like a sci-fi movie. Like,
Like
because they,
Superman.
yeah,
Like
because,
Superman came here in a pod
yeah,
from
yeah.
another Cosmo. Remember, they put him in that weird little
Yeah,
thing.
they even said there were holes in the stone for nutrients to get in to
Hmm.
help sustain this child. And when the child got here, it was a child of light, and
Hmm.
it had a goddess from the east that came and watched over him. And there's all this Morning Star association and Venus association, and like Ishtar is Venus, Ishtar and Inanna. So there's that aspect of it, but I don't know. I just there are people there that instead of saying it's a child of light today, the legend it seems like it's morphed into this was Lucifer, and he wasn't as bad as everybody says he was. Now I'm
Hmm.
not crazy about that idea. I'm not saying that that's what it is. I'm just telling you what people out there believe.
Right.
But this is the stone that Dali was obsessed with.
Hmm.
And I
Weird.
gotta, so Dolly's role in this story is kind of compelling in that way because, you know, you have this asteroid cradle that he went to visit. And Dolly said that he believed that the stone existed in 23 different dimensions.
Do you know that
So,
Superman was charged by a stone or brought down by a stone too?
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
remember that?
kryptonite or something like that. Or,
And then
yeah.
also it helped it one helped him, one didn't. Remember he went to that Crystal Palace like in the Antarctic. You remember
Hmm.
this?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
This is dinging all
That's
kinds of weird
Marvel.
Superman bells for me,
I
but
think
it's
that's Marvel. I think that's the same
yeah.
group of guys like Kirby and Stan Lee. I mean,
Hmm.
they must have known about this stuff somehow.
Wow.
I think Stan Lee may have known Hughes.
That's
I
weird.
think, but I got to just show you this one thing that Dolly
Yeah.
did because he was apparently Dolly was going out and like working with this stone metaphysically, like laying in it and like astral
Oh.
traveling or something. So I went back through some of his art, and I think he painted the stone. I
Oh
think it's
wow.
right here in this painting. Um, you can
Hmm.
see this looks trippy. This looks like you're in another dimension or you're in between dimensions. And you see how there's a guy looking in a cave here, and it looks like there's a blue stone back there.
Weird. And
And
look at how bad this guy looks too, like all thin and
mhm,
emaciated. Is
yeah,
that Howard Hughes
right.
with the long hair?
Yeah, you have to wonder. Yeah,
Very tall.
Dolly was an initiate. He, you know,
Huh.
himself. So I think he knew this portal site, and I think he knew this stone as well on a very personal level. And
Strange.
I don't know,
Huh.
like people who have been in these portals or been around this stone and gone into a like a an astral kind of a place, they say that when you go the shapes begin to change, right? And I see that in Dali's art big time. So
Mm-hmm. Weird.
they said he was out there, he was going to visit this stone that has all these legends that tied to Lucifer, and I just see like I see it in his art. Like it looks like that guy's going in there to it looks
Mm-hmm.
like he's got his hand on a blue stone.
Is
I
this
don't
guy
know.
wearing, is this like a one-breasted robe?
Yeah, yeah, this is weird. It's like an androgynous thing. It's like there's a guy, but he's got, you know, other parts. So
Mm-hmm.
and
Weird.
it's weird. And this person right here looks like they're off in another dimension, sticking their hand through into this one.
Hmm.
And you've
Very
got
strange.
like a chest of drawers that's creating a waterfall. It's very it you know, it's like
Yeah.
that painting I showed before. It he was inspired literally by him going into a portal. That's what this stuff looks like.
Wow.
So,
Yeah.
anyways,
Whew.
that
Weird, you guys. Yeah.
yeah.
And we've, you know, we know that, you know, the power of the airways is dark. Um, the power of technology is dark. All these things are dark. So it doesn't surprise me that we've had some weird stuff today. We always pray and but we ultimately have to use these same things, like your phone is a black mirror. Like this technology that we have isn't really supposed to happen. However, here we are. We have to use it to communicate this stuff, or else how are we ever going to know anything?
Yeah.
They're not going to tell us. And things are rapidly changing, rapidly been last couple of weeks have been very different than I thought it would be for once the president took over, not to mention that the World's Fairs are supposed to start in just a couple days. So I don't know what to expect with that. I don't think there'll be many party favors since the tariffs had their last boat docked today, but hey, whatever.
World's Fair. Now that's going to be interesting to see how that unfolds.
Very strange. He is definitely fulfilling some prophecies here. Did you also hear he wants the Gaza Strip named after him now? And the pictures of the Pope today. So him being the Pope, Trump.
And there was another thing I saw today too, where they had found, I think it was Doge, had gone in and found where one of our agencies over here was financing the Taliban. Of course, we already knew that. We already knew
Yeah, of
that,
course,
but
right?
that's another
Thanks.
side to this that it's somewhat validating and liberating. It's like things are coming to light that we've been talking about for years. We've known about it.
Years.
Everybody else considered it to be not, not legit, not a fairy tale, essentially. So there's also that side to it as well.
Yeah,
Like,
so weird. That's
yeah.
so weird. It's like, it is very validating. At the same time, it's disappointing because I knew a lot of people put their hope and faith in a person. Do remember, we don't do that. As Christians, your hope and faith isn't with politics. It isn't with a country. It isn't with any of these things. Now, do I still live here? Yeah. I mean, is it better than what we had? The other option? Probably. But I think they had to make it that bad to make it. I mean, you need to want it, right? What happened with Jesus? I mean, did the Jews kill Jesus, or did they have somebody do it for them? Right? Oh, well, they did. They had somebody do it for them. And why was that? Because they wanted a king, not him. They wanted a king, and he didn't fit the bill. So when we look at this stuff, don't get lost wanting a king. Look to God, not the stars, not the angels. I don't care what they tell you. John D says all day they lie, all day long. He says they lie. And he talked to them the most. So yeah. I'm just saying, he had, stone too. Black one.
Yeah, he did.
So
obsidian.
With that, I guess we'll wrap it up. This has been fascinating. I always love when we talk. It always goes down a really good road. I feel like we're always like thinking, if not the same, like in a similar area. So I love that.
Yeah. And this was such a big story. It's like, I don't know if I said this earlier, but I definitely thought this, like, I didn't really necessarily care if we covered this whole thing in one episode either. There's a lot here. I mean, believe it or not, there's more. There's when it comes to Hughes, there's always more. So we'll see what happens. We'll see what we do next time, and if it kind of adjoins to this one. But this was good.
Love it. And I do want to mention also, tunnels are underneath Salt Lake City, especially underneath the temple.
Yeah.
So we'll close it there.
We'll close it with
Tim,
that.
Let people know where to find you, and I will do the same for vice versa.
Beat me to it. I was about to say it. Heidi, tell everyone where they can find. You can find me at Sixth Sensory Podcast. I have Sixth Sensory Podcast Instagram, but for the show, you can go to Spotify, Apple, Spotify, Apple, YouTube, and Patreon.
Awesome.
And Heidi, where can they find you?
Thank you so much. I'm Heidi Love of the Unfiltered Rise. I'm everywhere podcasts are served. I do have my own website, unfilteredrisepodcast.com. And I am also now an Occult Reject, so you can see me on the Occult Reject show. Thank you so much, Tim. I appreciate you.
Yeah. Thank you.
We'll do it again. It's always fun. Bye, guys. Bye.